The wind whistled through the tall pine trees surrounding the small mountain cabin. The clouds were dark, heavy, and moving fast across the sky. Rain began to patter against the wooden roof. Inside the cabin, Mark sat by the fireplace sipping warm tea. The fire crackled softly, and the small room smelled of pine and burning wood. He loved the peace and quiet of the mountains. The city's noise, pollution, and endless rush of life seemed like a distant memory here. He had moved to this cabin to find peace, to think, and to live quietly. Mark liked his solitude. He spent his days reading old books, hiking the mountain trails, and watching the changing seasons. But tonight felt different. The storm outside was louder than usual. Lightning flashed, and the sound of thunder shook the cabin slightly. Mark felt a strange chill run down his spine, even though the fire was warm. He tried to ignore it, thinking it was just the storm. Suddenly, a bright light flashed through the window. It was different from the lightning. It was small, round, and moving fast through the trees. Mark frowned and got up from his chair. He moved to the window and pulled aside the curtain. His eyes widened. There in the dark forest below, two small figures stumbled among the trees. Their shapes were not human, at least not fully. They were thin, with slightly elongated heads, and their eyes reflected the lightning like small mirrors. They looked lost, scared, and weak. Mark's heart raced. What are they?" he whispered. The storm roared in reply. He hesitated. Should he call someone? Should he run? But something in their posture told him they needed help. They were not aggressive. They were frightened. And the forest was dangerous tonight. Without thinking much, Mark grabbed his coat, a flashlight, and a first aid kit. He opened the cabin door, and the cold rain hit him immediately. Water soaked his hair and clothes, but he didn't mind. He needed to reach them. He ran carefully down the slope toward the forest. The trees bent with the wind, and the ground was slippery with mud. Still, he kept moving. As he got closer, he saw one of the figures fall. The other tried to help, but its movements were awkward, unsure. Mark ran faster. When he reached them, he crouched down. "Hey, are you okay? Can you stand?" he asked. The taller of the two looked at him. Its eyes were large, glowing faintly in the storm. It made a soft, high-pitched sound like it was trying to speak but couldn't. Mark realized they couldn't speak his language. He stayed calm and pointed to the cabin. "Come with me. You'll be safe there." The smaller one hesitated, trembling, but the taller one nodded slowly. Mark gently helped them up. Their skin was smooth and pale, almost glowing faintly in the storm. Their bodies were thin but surprisingly flexible. They were not humans, but they were intelligent. Back at the cabin, Mark dried them with towels and helped them sit near the fireplace. The warmth made them relax a little. The taller one moved its hands over the smaller one in a comforting gesture. Mark watched them carefully. He didn't know what species they were, but he felt a strange connection. These beings were alone, scared, and in need of help, just like he sometimes felt when he moved away from the world. He gave them some water. They drank slowly, their hands delicate and small. The taller one touched the cup gently, then put its hand on its chest, a gesture that seemed to mean thank you. Mark smiled. "You're welcome. Don't worry. You're safe here." He sat down across from them. The storm outside raged on, but inside the cabin there was a strange calm. Mark noticed the twins were observing everything. Their large eyes moved quickly, taking in the fire, the furniture, and even the books on the shelf. They seemed curious and intelligent, but they were also frightened. Mark wanted to ask them questions, but he realized they couldn't understand him. Instead, he tried simple gestures. He pointed to himself. "Mark," he said slowly. He pointed to them. The taller one looked at the smaller one, then back at Mark. It touched its chest. "Ta-la?" it asked softly. Mark shook his head and smiled. "I don't understand, but it's okay." He gave them blankets and made sure they were warm. Then he went to the kitchen and prepared a small meal. Simple bread, cheese, and some fruit. He set it in front of them. The taller one hesitated, then picked up the bread. Its fingers were long and delicate, but they handled the food carefully. The smaller one followed, mimicking the taller one. Mark watched quietly. After they ate, the taller one moved closer to the fire, its eyes reflecting the flames. It reached out a hand and the firelight seemed to respond. The flames flickered unusually, almost as if they were dancing to the twins' movement. Mark's jaw dropped slightly. He thought he was imagining it, but the fire really did seem to move differently. He realized these beings were extraordinary. They were not only intelligent, but they also seemed to have abilities he had never seen before. He took a deep breath and reminded himself to stay calm. "I don't know who you are or where you come from," he said softly, "but I will help you." The twins looked at each other and then back at him. The taller one nodded slowly. Then something strange happened. It placed its hand over the smaller one's heart. A soft light glowed briefly from the contact, and the smaller twin seemed to relax even more. Mark realized that this was more than comfort. It was something remarkable, something beyond human understanding. Night deepened, and the storm slowly passed. The twins curled up under the blankets, finally resting. Mark sat in his chair, staring into the fire. He felt a mixture of awe and responsibility. These creatures were not just visitors, they were lives entrusted to him. He didn't know what would happen next, but he knew one thing: he couldn't turn them away. Sleep came slowly. Mark's mind was full of questions. Who were they? Where did they come from? Why were they in the forest, lost and scared? And most importantly, what would happen if anyone found out they were here? In the early hours of the morning, a faint glow began to appear outside the cabin. Mark woke up and went to the window. The twins were awake, their eyes glowing softly. They were standing by the edge of the forest, looking around cautiously. They didn't make a sound, but Mark could feel their curiosity and intelligence. He stepped outside carefully. The air was cold and fresh after the storm. "It's okay," he said softly. "You can stay here. You don't have to leave." The taller twin tilted its head and made a sound soft and melodic. It seemed to understand him. Then it pointed to the mountain. A silent message passed between them. A message of trust, hope, and shared understanding. Mark smiled. "We will figure this out together," he said. And for the first time in his life, Mark felt that the mountains were not just a place of solitude. They were a place where something incredible had begun. Something that could change his life and perhaps the world forever. The twins were safe for now. But their journey had only just begun. And Mark knew deep in his heart that the days ahead would be full of surprises, challenges, and wonders he could never have imagined. As the sun rose, casting golden light on the wet pine trees, Mark looked at the twins and whispered, "Welcome to your new home, and welcome to a new beginning." The morning after the storm, the mountain air was crisp and filled with the smell of wet pine. The sunlight slipped through the tall trees, creating golden streaks across the cabin floor. Mark moved quietly around the kitchen, preparing breakfast. He wanted to give the twins some normal human food to help them feel safe. Bread, fresh fruit, and warm tea for himself. When he returned to the living room, he found the twins sitting near the window. Their large eyes followed every movement of the sunlight. They were silent, watching the patterns of light and shadow. Mark noticed the smaller twin occasionally reached out a hand and touched the air, as if trying to catch the sun's rays. The taller twin's gaze followed carefully, almost protective. "Good morning," Mark said gently. "Did you sleep well?" The taller twin looked at him, then at the smaller one. A soft, melodic sound came from its throat, a kind of musical whisper. Mark didn't understand the words, but the sound felt calm, peaceful. The smaller twin responded with a higher-pitched note. Mark smiled, trying to stay patient. "I think you like the sunlight," he said, pointing at the window. He wanted them to feel comfortable in the cabin. He noticed how delicate their bodies were. Their skin still glowed faintly, but it seemed softer now, like it had absorbed the warmth of the fire. Suddenly, a small plant in a pot near the window leaned slightly toward the twins. Mark blinked. The sunlight was normal, the wind barely stirred. Yet the plant seemed drawn to them. He frowned, unsure if he imagined it. The twins noticed his gaze. The taller one lifted a hand and lightly touched the smaller twin's shoulder. A faint shimmer of light passed between them. The plant leaned closer again, almost as if responding to their energy. Mark took a cautious step back. Something extraordinary was happening. Breakfast was quiet. Mark tried to eat while keeping an eye on them. The smaller twin picked up a piece of bread carefully, mimicking his movements. The taller one watched silently, occasionally adjusting the smaller one's posture. It was clear they had a strong bond, communicating without words. After breakfast, Mark decided to explore a little. He led them outside, wanting them to see the forest and feel free. The twins hesitated at first, but eventually followed. The ground was wet from the storm, and the air smelled fresh and clean. Birds chirped in the distance, and small animals cautiously appeared from hiding places. The smaller twin crouched near a puddle. It touched the water, and the ripples moved in perfect circles, reflecting sunlight in shimmering patterns. Mark watched, amazed. Then the taller twin raised its hands, and the surrounding plants seemed to grow slightly taller, bending toward the twins as if greeting them. Mark took a deep breath. He knew they were not dangerous. They were curious, intelligent, and extraordinary. He wanted to learn more about them, but he had to be patient. "Do you like it here?" he asked softly, gesturing around. The taller twin made another soft sound, and the smaller one responded with a gentle nod. Mark smiled. As the day went on, the twins began to explore more. They moved gracefully through the forest, their eyes wide with wonder. Every small creature seemed to notice them. Squirrels stopped to look at them, and birds perched on branches near them without fear. Mark realized that the twins' presence affected the natural world in subtle ways. By midday, Mark noticed another strange occurrence. Small stones on the ground were moving slightly, shifting toward the twins' path. He crouched to watch. The taller twin lifted a hand, and the stones seemed to float, forming neat patterns on the ground before gently falling back. Mark's heart raced. He had never seen anything like this. He wanted to ask questions, but he didn't know where to start. Instead, he tried simple gestures again. He pointed at himself. "Mark," he said. Then he pointed at them. The taller twin touched its chest and made a melodic sound, pointing at the smaller twin as well. Mark understood a little. They recognized each other and him. It was a beginning of communication. Later, Mark returned to the cabin. He wanted to write notes, draw pictures, or find a way to communicate more clearly. The twins followed, watching every movement carefully. Inside, the cabin felt alive. The fire flickered in a strange pattern, almost dancing in response to the twins' energy. Mark shook his head in wonder. He set up a small table with paper, pencils, and markers. "Maybe we can try drawing," he said. The twins tilted their heads curiously. The smaller twin picked up a pencil, holding it awkwardly. The taller twin guided its hand gently. They drew strange, geometric shapes, some glowing faintly, some moving slightly as if alive. Mark stared, astonished. "This is incredible," he whispered. The twins looked at each other and then at him, making small sounds. It was clear they were proud, but also unsure if he would understand. Mark nodded. "I understand that you are trying to share something," he said softly. The afternoon passed quietly. Mark watched the twins practice simple movements, lifting objects without touching them, making lights shimmer on the floor, and even coaxing small animals to approach them. He realized these abilities were natural to them, not magical tricks. As the sun began to set, the twins gathered near the fireplace again. They seemed tired, but their eyes were bright with curiosity. Mark sat across from them. "I know you are far from home," he said slowly, "and I don't know your language or your world, but I promise I will help you." The taller twin made a long, soft sound, almost like a sigh. The smaller one leaned against it, resting quietly. Mark felt a deep connection with them. These beings were intelligent, gentle, and capable of extraordinary things. But they were also vulnerable, just like humans could be. Night fell, and the twins slept under blankets. Mark sat near the fire, thinking. The storm yesterday had brought them to his cabin. Their presence was strange, wonderful, and dangerous in ways he didn't fully understand. But he also knew one thing. Humans had a unique ability to care, to protect, and to adapt. And he would do everything he could to keep them safe. Suddenly, the wind howled outside, carrying a faint rhythmic hum. Mark froze. The twins stirred in their sleep. The taller one's hand lifted slightly, and a soft glow appeared around it. The hum outside seemed to respond, echoing in the mountains. Mark realized that the twins were connected to something larger, something beyond the forest, beyond the mountain, perhaps even beyond Earth. He felt both fear and awe. He didn't know what dangers might come, but he also knew that their presence was a chance to witness something incredible. The twins were not ordinary beings, they were extraordinary, and their survival, their trust, and their abilities could teach him more than any book or human experience ever could. Hours passed quietly. The cabin was warm, the fire crackling softly. Outside, the wind calmed and the moonlight reflected on the wet pine needles. Mark finally allowed himself to rest, sitting near the twins, ready to face whatever tomorrow would bring, and tomorrow promised to be different. The twins would continue to explore their surroundings. Mark would continue to learn from them, and slowly, They would find a way to communicate, to understand, and perhaps to change each other's lives forever. Mark had discovered something incredible. The twins were more than visitors. They were a reminder of how vast and amazing the universe could be. They were proof that life, intelligence, and wonder could exist in ways humans had never imagined. And he was ready to embrace it, to help them, and to learn everything he could. For the first time since moving to the mountains, Mark didn't feel alone. He had companions, strangers from another world who were curious, intelligent, and capable of extraordinary acts. And together, they would face the mysteries of the forest, the mountains, and the unknown universe beyond. The morning sun shone over the mountain, lighting the wet pine trees in soft gold. The cabin was quiet, except for the faint crackle of the fire and the occasional chirp of birds. Mark moved slowly around, checking the small garden he had started outside the cabin. It was peaceful, too peaceful, he thought. Something in his gut warned him that this calm might not last. The twins were awake, sitting near the window. Their large eyes followed him as he worked. They were quiet, observing, but Mark noticed a subtle tension in their posture. It was not fear of him, it was something else. Something beyond the forest. Mark didn't know it yet, but the twins were sensing something far away, something human eyes could not see. Signals from satellites, strange radio waves, and distant searches were converging on their location. People or beings were coming to investigate the mysterious lights in the mountains. Mark finished watering the plants and went back inside. He sat with the twins, trying simple gestures to communicate. "I think someone may come," he said slowly, pointing outside. The taller twin tilted its head, making soft sounds. The smaller twin held onto its hand tightly, sensing danger. By midday, the first signs appeared. A distant hum, metallic and low, filled the air. Mark froze. "Do you hear that?" he whispered. The twins' ears, or whatever they used to detect sound, twitched. The taller one rose, scanning the forest with its large reflective eyes. The hum grew louder, steady and deliberate. Mark stepped outside and saw them. Two black vehicles moving carefully along the mountain trail. Their shapes were strange, more advanced than normal cars. Lights flashed, scanning the forest. Mark's heart raced. "They're coming for you," he muttered. The twins crouched slightly, preparing to hide, but Mark held up a hand. "No," he said firmly. "We face this together. You're not alone." The vehicle stopped at the edge of the forest. Several humans in uniform stepped out, carrying equipment. Mark recognized their intent immediately. They were not here for friendship. They were here to capture, to examine, to take the twins, and perhaps to destroy if anything went wrong. Mark acted quickly. "We have to move inside." "Stay calm," he said. He led the twins back to the cabin. The taller twin followed closely, the smaller one clinging to it. Inside, Mark closed the doors and windows, thinking fast. He needed a plan, something to protect them. The humans outside were cautious, moving slowly through the trees. They carried devices that scanned for heat, energy, and movement. But they could not detect everything. Mark realized that the twins' presence was partly invisible to their machines. He had a chance to use that to their advantage. He looked at the twins. "Do you understand?" he asked. The taller one nodded slowly, eyes bright. Mark pointed to the door, then to himself, then to the twins. "We work together. We protect ourselves." The twins made soft, melodic sounds. They were ready. Mark opened his backpack and pulled out ropes, blankets, and a small flare. "If they come too close, we distract them," he whispered. The twins tilted their heads, curious. Then the taller twin raised its hand and a faint glow surrounded it. The smaller twin mirrored the gesture. Outside, one of the humans lifted a device to scan again. The glow from the twins made a ripple in the sensors. The humans frowned, adjusting their machines. They had no idea what they were dealing with. Mark realized something important. Humans were resourceful, intelligent, and capable of quick thinking. But in this situation, their knowledge of the unknown was limited. That gave him an advantage. He turned to the twins. "Follow my lead," he said. "We need to stay calm, stay quiet, and stay smart." The first human moved closer to the cabin. Mark waited until the light from the window reflected his plan. Then he threw a blanket outside, making a shadow. The twins added their glow, creating patterns of light that confused the humans. For a moment, the searchers stopped, unsure what they were seeing. "Inside," Mark whispered. "Good, stay with me." The twins nodded, sensing his courage. They had no words, but their bond with him grew stronger. Mark realized that even though they were from another world, they trusted him. And in this moment, That trust was more powerful than fear. The humans tried to approach the cabin again, more carefully this time. Mark and the twins acted in unison. The smaller twin raised a hand and the fire inside the fireplace flickered unusually, casting shadows in rapid patterns across the walls. The humans outside paused, thinking the cabin might be unstable or dangerous. Mark seized the moment. "We move to the forest," he said softly. The twins followed, moving gracefully through the back door. Mark led them down a hidden trail he had discovered earlier. The twins' glowing hands lit the path subtly, without revealing their exact location. As they moved through the trees, Mark noticed that animals were helping them in small ways. Birds flew ahead, squirrels darted between branches, and even deer paused to watch. It was as if the forest itself recognized the twins were not harmful. The twins' abilities extended beyond the cabin. They affected nature in quiet, protective ways. They reached a small clearing. Mark crouched behind a rock. The twins were beside him, their hands glowing faintly. The humans were still searching, moving carefully. But they could not find the hidden path Mark knew. Mark whispered, "We're safe for now, but we need a plan." The taller twin touched his shoulder lightly. Mark understood they were ready to follow his lead, to cooperate. Together they would find a way to survive without hurting anyone. Night fell and the humans retreated temporarily. Mark and the twins returned to the cabin carefully. The storm from 2 nights ago had passed, but the tension remained. Mark realized that the outside world might always pose a threat, but he also knew that humans could adapt, learn, and act courageously when needed. Inside the cabin, the twins rested again. The taller one curled around the smaller one, their glowing hands brushing softly. Mark watched quietly. He felt awe and respect. These beings were extraordinary, but they were also vulnerable. He knew his role was to protect, guide, and learn from them. Mark thought about the future. He had to prepare for more visitors, more challenges. But he also realized something important. Humans could face the unknown, think quickly, and act wisely. His courage, intelligence, and empathy were as valuable as any power the twins had. For hours, they stayed near the fire. Mark explained simple gestures, using drawings and objects to communicate. The twins responded slowly, learning how humans acted, how they thought, and how they solved problems. Mark saw flashes of their intelligence, quick learning, observation, and creativity. By midnight, the cabin was quiet. The twins slept peacefully, and Mark sat near the window looking at the stars. He thought about the mountains, the forest, and the world beyond. He realized that these mountains were no longer just a place of solitude. They were a sanctuary, a laboratory of trust, and a stage for courage. He smiled. "We will survive this," he whispered to himself. Together. Suddenly, a soft glow appeared on the twins' hands, even in sleep. It pulsed gently, as if responding to the calm of the cabin. Mark understood this was more than rest. It was energy, connection, and healing. The twins' abilities were not just strange, they were a gift. And Mark understood that humans, too, had gifts. Courage, empathy, intelligence, and the ability to protect others. That was his gift in this moment. He would combine it with theirs, and together, they could face whatever threats came next. The night deepened, and the cabin was filled with quiet warmth. Outside, the forest watched silently. The humans searching would return, but Mark was ready. And the twins were ready. They were not alone anymore. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but also new discoveries. Mark felt hope, determination, and connection. The twins had chosen to trust him, and he had chosen to protect them. That bond, fragile yet strong, was the most powerful thing in the world. And as he closed his eyes near the glowing twins, he knew one thing clearly. The days ahead would test them, surprise them, and perhaps show the humans' true potential, courage, intelligence, and the ability to protect what is good. The mountains, the forest, and the stars above were witnesses to a new beginning. The night was quiet over the mountain. The cabin sat among tall pine trees, its windows glowing faintly in the darkness. Inside, Mark was awake, sitting near the fire. His mind was busy with thoughts. The twins were asleep under blankets, their faint glow filling the room with soft light. He couldn't stop thinking about the events of the past days, the storm, their arrival, the strange phenomena, and the humans who had searched for them. Mark knew that danger could return at any time. The humans were smart, curious, and persistent, but he also knew that the twins' abilities were extraordinary. They could protect themselves, but he needed to understand them better. He looked at the glowing twins and felt a mix of awe and responsibility. These were lives he had promised to protect. Suddenly, a sound echoed in the forest outside. A soft metallic hum, familiar and threatening. Mark's heart raced. He quickly woke the twins. The smaller one opened its large eyes, glowing faintly. The taller twin rose gracefully, its gaze scanning the darkness. They made soft melodic sounds, communicating without words. Mark could sense their alertness. "They're back," he whispered. "We need a plan." The hum grew louder. Mark realized it was the humans, returning with more advanced equipment. They were determined to capture the twins, to study them or worse. Mark's mind worked quickly. He knew the cabin alone could not protect them. They had to use their intelligence, speed, and unique abilities. "Follow me," he said softly, pointing to the forest behind the cabin. The twins nodded. Together they moved quietly, slipping into the shadows. The taller twin's hands glowed faintly, casting soft light on the path, but the glow was subtle enough not to reveal their position. The humans approached the cabin, scanning with devices. Their machines beeped and whirred, but they could not detect the twins hiding in the forest. Mark crouched behind a large boulder with the twins. "They can't see us clearly," he whispered. "We have the advantage if we stay calm and smart." The taller twin touched the smaller one's shoulder. A soft shimmer passed between them. Mark watched, amazed. The energy seemed to extend beyond them, interacting with the forest. Small branches bent, leaves rustled, and shadows shifted, creating a natural camouflage. The humans paused, confused by the strange patterns of movement and light. Mark realized the twins were not only intelligent but also creative. They could use their abilities in ways humans could not anticipate, and they trusted him to lead them. He felt a surge of courage. Humans could act quickly, plan cleverly, and protect others with strategy and intelligence. That was his gift. He signaled the twins to follow him along a hidden path. The forest around them seemed to respond subtly to their presence. Birds flew low, squirrels darted across branches, and even small animals stopped to watch. The twins' abilities were calming the forest, guiding them safely. Suddenly, a bright light flashed from one of the human devices. Mark and the twins froze. The humans had detected something, but the twins acted quickly. The taller twin raised its hands and a wave of light spread outward. The glow was not harmful. It created an illusion, bending shadows and light in confusing patterns. The humans paused, unsure what they were seeing. Mark whispered, "Good. Keep it steady." The twins' glow shifted gently, creating moving shapes that mimicked their forms but did not reveal their exact location. The humans hesitated, trying to adjust their sensors. Mark felt a sense of pride. Humans had curiosity, intelligence, and courage. The twins had abilities beyond imagination. Together, they could protect themselves without harming anyone. That combination of trust, intelligence, and cooperation was powerful. The humans moved closer, trying to find the source of the strange lights. But the twins were ready. The taller twin raised its hand again, and the fireflies in the forest responded. They moved in patterns, creating glowing walls that obscured the twins' path. Mark followed, guiding them carefully. Then something unexpected happened. The taller twin extended its hand fully, and a soft wave of energy passed through the clearing. Small rocks lifted gently into the air, hovering in perfect balance. Mark's jaw dropped. He had never seen anything like it. The twins were not fighting. They were creating a barrier without harming anyone. The humans stopped in their tracks. Their devices malfunctioned slightly in the unusual energy field. Mark realized that the twins were capable of more than protection. They could influence the environment in subtle but powerful ways. He whispered to them, "You're doing great. Keep it calm, keep it steady." The smaller twin glowed softly, assisting the taller one. Together they maintained the barrier, their energy synchronized. Mark felt a deep respect for them. These beings were gentle, intelligent, and capable of extraordinary acts, yet they used their powers wisely. The humans decided to retreat temporarily. They needed more information, more equipment, and more planning. Mark and the twins watched silently as the machines disappeared into the distance. The forest returned to calm. The fireflies and glowing plants settled back into normal patterns. Mark turned to the twins. "You did it," he whispered. "You protected yourself and me without hurting anyone." That was amazing. The taller twin made a soft, melodic sound, almost like a laugh. The smaller one smiled, a rare and subtle expression. Mark realized something important. Humans could face danger with courage, intelligence, and careful planning. But the twins had abilities far beyond human understanding. Yet they acted with morality, restraint, and care. It was a shocking revelation. Power did not need to harm to be effective. And humans, too, could act bravely and wisely when needed. The twins led Mark back to the cabin. They were calm but alert. The night was quiet, but they all knew that more challenges could come. Mark felt a sense of responsibility. He had promised to protect them, but he also understood that humans could learn from them. Cooperation, empathy, and trust were more powerful than fear or aggression. Inside the cabin, the twins rested again. The taller one placed its hand over the smaller one's heart, and a soft glow spread gently. Mark watched, fascinated. Their ability to heal, calm, and protect was not just physical, it was emotional, mental, and moral. Mark thought about the humans who had searched for them. They were intelligent and curious, but they had limited understanding of the unknown. That was a reminder. Humans could act bravely, but they also needed empathy, patience, and respect for life beyond their experience. As the twins slept, Mark reflected on the day's events. The shocking revelation was not just the twins' power, it was their morality. They could have harmed the humans or fled recklessly, but they chose restraint, creativity, and protection. Mark realized that humans, too, could rise to challenges in the same way. Courage, intelligence, and empathy were gifts in themselves. The night passed slowly. Mark stayed near the fire, keeping watch. The twins glowed faintly, pulsing with soft energy. Outside, the forest seemed calm, alive, and protective. Mark felt a connection not just to the twins, but to the mountains, the forest, and the universe beyond. He whispered softly, "We are a team now. Together we can face anything." The taller twin moved slightly, brushing its glowing hand against his arm. Mark felt warmth, trust, and understanding. The bond between human and aliens had deepened. It was more than friendship. It was cooperation, trust, and shared purpose. The night continued, but Mark no longer felt fear. The twins had shown him the true meaning of courage and morality. Power alone was not enough. Understanding, patience, and care were equally important. And humans, when combined with empathy and intelligence, could match the strength of beings from other worlds. Mark finally allowed himself to rest, sitting near the glowing twins. Outside, the stars shone bright, reflecting in the calm forest. The mountains were peaceful, but the world beyond was vast and unknown. Yet he knew that together, they could face whatever came next. The shocking act of the twins had changed everything. They had shown him the power of restraint, intelligence, and morality. And Mark had shown them that humans could be brave, quick-thinking, and compassionate. The night ended with quiet warmth. The twins rested, glowing softly. Mark sat near the fire, filled with awe, respect, and hope. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but he knew they could meet them together. The twins were not just visitors. They were teachers, friends, and reminders of the incredible possibilities of life in the universe. And Mark knew that the days ahead would reveal even more wonders, surprises, and lessons about courage, intelligence, and trust. The morning sun rose over the mountains, spilling golden light through the tall pines. The cabin was quiet and calm, the storm and threats of the past days seeming like a distant memory. Mark moved quietly, making tea and preparing a small breakfast. The twins were awake, sitting near the window, their large eyes reflecting the sunlight. They were calm, their soft glow faint but steady. Mark smiled. "Good morning," he said softly. The taller twin responded with a melodic sound, tilting its head while the smaller one mimicked the gesture. There was no fear, no urgency, just curiosity and trust. The events of the past days had created a bond between them that was strong and unspoken. Outside, the forest was alive with movement. Birds chirped, squirrels darted through branches, and the small plants and flowers seemed brighter. Mark noticed how the twins' presence still influenced nature, subtly and gently. They had become part of the forest, and in return, the forest seemed to welcome them. Mark decided it was time to show them more of the mountains. He led them down a narrow trail that wound along the hillside, revealing small streams, moss-covered rocks, and hidden clearings. The twins moved gracefully beside him, their eyes wide with wonder. They touched the plants carefully, observing them with fascination. The smaller twin reached down to a stream, letting the water ripple over its fingers. The taller twin watched, guiding and protecting its sibling. Mark realized that their curiosity and intelligence were endless. They were learning about Earth quickly, not just observing but understanding. And Mark was learning too about patience, trust, and the extraordinary possibilities that life could hold. As they walked, Mark noticed a faint light coming from deeper in the forest. It pulsed gently like a signal. He pointed toward it. The taller twin's eyes brightened and it made a soft, excited sound. Mark had no idea what it was, but he sensed it was not dangerous. He nodded and the twins led him toward the light. They reached a small clearing where the light originated from a group of glowing stones. The stones floated slightly above the ground, moving in slow circles. Mark's jaw dropped. He had never seen anything like it. The twins moved closer, touching the stones lightly. A soft hum filled the air and the stone's glow intensified, illuminating the clearing in a warm, gentle light. Mark understood that this was more than a natural phenomenon. The twins were interacting with the energy of the forest, guiding it, harmonizing with it. They were not just visitors. They were part of the ecosystem now, capable of influencing it without harm. "This is amazing," Mark whispered. "You're helping the forest, aren't you?" The taller twin made a soft musical sound as if confirming. The smaller twin touched Mark's hand gently, sharing its calm energy. Mark felt warmth and connection, understanding that trust and cooperation could create harmony, even between species. After spending time in the clearing, they returned to the cabin. Mark prepared a simple meal and the twins ate slowly, savoring each bite. The sun began to set, painting the mountains in orange and pink. The warmth of the day gave way to a gentle chill, but inside the cabin the fire crackled softly. As night fell, Mark felt a deep sense of peace. The twins had shown him wonders, but they had also taught him about morality, restraint, and trust. They had faced danger without harming anyone. And humans too could rise to challenges with courage, intelligence, and empathy. Suddenly the twins became alert. Their eyes glowed brighter and soft hums filled the room. Mark looked outside and saw a distant figure moving along the mountain trail. It was a human alone carrying equipment. The twins made soft warning sounds. Mark understood. They were alerting him to potential danger. He moved quietly to the door. "Stay calm," he whispered. The figure stopped at the edge of the forest, looking around. Mark stepped outside, keeping his hands visible. The figure raised a hand in greeting. It was a scientist from the previous searches, someone who had come to understand, not capture. Mark nodded slowly. "It's okay. We're peaceful," he said. The scientist hesitated, then lowered the device. Mark realized that humans, when approached with honesty and calmness, could act wisely. The twins watched silently, their glowing eyes observing every movement. The scientist spoke carefully. I didn't expect to see them safe. I thought they might be captured or harmed." Mark smiled gently. "They are safe. And we are all learning from each other." The scientist nodded, impressed. "I see, they are incredible. And you've protected them without any conflict." Mark felt pride. Humans could act with courage and morality, and the twins' abilities had shown what restraint and intelligence could accomplish. The night passed quietly. Mark, the twins, and the scientist sat together, sharing knowledge in small ways. Gestures, observations, and mutual understanding. Words were limited, but trust, empathy, and intelligence bridged the gap. The twins glowed softly, interacting with the environment, showing harmony with life and nature. By morning, the scientist prepared to leave, promising to return with more understanding and no threat. Mark waved, feeling relief. The twins moved closer to him, their hands brushing his arm. They had learned about human courage, and he had learned about their morality and abilities. The next days were peaceful. Mark explored more of the mountains with the twins, teaching them about Earth's landscapes, seasons, and wildlife. They learned quickly, imitating movements, touching plants, and even creating subtle patterns with their glow that encouraged growth in small plants. Mark realized that humans and the twins could improve the world together, using intelligence, creativity, and care. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the mountains, Mark sat by the fire with the twins. The taller twin placed a hand on the smaller one's shoulder, and a soft wave of energy spread. The fire flickered in response, the room glowing warmly. Mark understood that their abilities were not just for protection, they were for creation, healing, and harmony. he whispered softly. "We can do great things together." The twins' melodic sound seemed to confirm. Mark smiled, feeling hope for the future. Humans had courage, problem-solving, and empathy. The twins had intelligence, creativity, and abilities beyond imagination. Together, they could face challenges, protect life, and create harmony. As night deepened, Mark looked out the window at the stars. He realized that the twins' journey had only just begun, but so had his own. They were no longer just guests. They were teachers, friends, and partners. And the mountains, the forest, and the stars above were witnesses to a new beginning. Days turned into weeks. Mark, the twins, and the forest adapted to each other. The twins' glow illuminated the cabin at night, creating warmth and safety. Mark learned to understand their subtle gestures and sounds, while the twins learned about human kindness, morality, and courage. The bond between them strengthened. One morning, Mark noticed small changes in the forest, plants growing stronger, small animals appearing without fear, and streams flowing more clearly. The twins' presence and care were creating harmony, showing that even small acts of intelligence, empathy, and morality could make a big difference. Mark realized that humans had a unique gift. They could care for others, act bravely, and solve problems, and when combined with the abilities of the twins, they could protect life, create peace, and inspire hope. It was the perfect example of what humanity could achieve. The twins' departure eventually came, though not immediately. They had learned, grown, and adapted. Mark had grown too. The moment of farewell was gentle. The taller twin placed a hand on Mark's shoulder, glowing softly. The smaller one brushed his arm lightly. Their eyes reflected gratitude, trust, and shared understanding. Mark whispered, "Goodbye, but not really. We will meet again." The twins made soft melodic sounds, nodding. They turned and moved toward the forest, their glow fading as they disappeared into the trees. Mark watched silently, feeling hope, pride, and wonder. After they left, the cabin felt quiet again, but it was no longer lonely. Mark understood that humans, with courage, intelligence, and empathy, could build bonds beyond species, beyond worlds. He had learned from the twins, and they had learned from him. Together, they had created harmony, faced danger, and shown that life, no matter where it came from, could coexist peacefully. The forest remained vibrant. The streams flowed clearly, and the mountains stood tall. Mark sat by the fire, sipping tea, feeling content. The twins' presence had changed his life. They had taught him about intelligence, morality, and trust. And he had taught them about courage, creativity, and empathy. Mark looked at the stars above, smiling. He knew the universe was vast, full of wonders, challenges, and mysteries. But he also knew that humans could rise to meet them. With courage, intelligence, and heart, they could protect life, create peace, and explore the unknown. The twins had returned to their world, but their lessons stayed with him. And in the quiet mountains, with the forest as his companion, Mark realized that a new beginning had arrived, for him, for humanity, and perhaps for the universe itself.